Hey, listen!
Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and this time we are talking about whether it is too late for the long-rumored Donkey Kong Switch. And the reason we're talking about this today is because not so long ago we got the September Nintendo Direct for 2023, and going into that Nintendo Direct, there was a rumor that we would be getting something Donkey Kong related. Now this rumor was coming from PRO, and we kind of just call it leaks because of how good their track record is. It's spotless. And going into this Direct, they were suggesting something Donkey Kong, but as their leaks came out, it became more apparent that this would be Mario vs. Donkey Kong, and that's exactly what happened in the Nintendo Direct. That's what was confirmed. And with this confirmation of Mario vs. Donkey Kong, some are doubting if we'll ever be getting anything Donkey Kong related. It's like a mainline new Donkey Kong game for Nintendo Switch, especially with all the talk about Switch 2 coming out next year. So, is it actually too late for Donkey Kong Switch? Well, that's what we're talking about today. But before going forward, let me point out that we are aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. With your help, it can happen. So for those that don't know, there's been this rumor going around for a while from several different sources that a Donkey Kong game is in development. And a lot of us assume that this will be coming to Nintendo Switch. I myself heard a while ago that something Donkey Kong is coming. And it's been believed that there's this big plan to restore the Donkey Kong IP, make Donkey Kong relevant again. And when you factor in the Mario Bros. Movie, how Donkey Kong had a very big role in that, and how the expansion to Super Nintendo World, the very first one, is a Donkey Kong expansion, it does feel like maybe that rumor was true and Nintendo does want to bring the Donkey Kong brand back to relevance. But I've been contending that it makes sense for a big new Donkey Kong game to be at the core of this all. So if Nintendo is going to open the Donkey Kong expansion next year, that's the current plan unless it's delayed, there should be a new Donkey Kong game. And considering how late we are into the Switch's life cycle with so many people who own a Switch, if there's a time to put out a Donkey Kong game that can get a lot of sales, perhaps now is the time. But the wrench that's thrown into this theory is perhaps Mario vs. Donkey Kong. It's somewhat Donkey Kong related. Donkey Kong is the antagonist in this game. His name is in the title. Maybe that's Donkey Kong enough before Nintendo opens the park. I don't think so. Firstly, let me just say that when you read the description for Mario vs. Donkey Kong Nintendo's website, it's not what some people think it is. So some people think that this is a brand new Donkey Kong game. It's not. It's a remake. So let me just quickly here read the description. Run, jump, and backflip your way to rescuing the stolen mini Mario toys in this puzzling twist on Mario action. Obstacles like spikes, moving platforms, and falling bricks stand your way. Put your brain to work and figure out the best way to reach the mini Marios. The rivalry that originally heated up on the Game Boy Advance system reignites on the Nintendo Switch system with newly added co-op play and updated visuals. So there's several things here that I think are really important to note. So firstly, yes, this is a remake of a Game Boy Advance game. That's what this is. This isn't a brand new title, and it's also something that stars Mario. Mario Action. This is a Mario action puzzle platformer. So Donkey Kong isn't really the star, he's the second fiddle. It's not a Donkey Kong game. But this description also talks about rivalry, and I think that's actually really important here. Why? Because yes, Mario vs. Donkey Kong depicts a rivalry of Mario vs. Donkey Kong. It really builds up a dynamic of their relationship, which is something that reminds me of the Super Mario Bros. Movie that came out not too long ago, where Mario vs. Donkey Kong had a very comedic but antagonistic rivalry. Very much like what we see in Mario vs. Donkey Kong. And I do think that Nintendo is absolutely taking advantage of this boost of the Mario brand for the Mario Bros. Movie by putting out different Mario Universe games now. We're getting Mario Wonder in October, we're getting Mario RPG in November, we're getting Princess Peach Showtime in March, and yes, we are getting Mario vs. Donkey Kong in February. And considering that relationship we saw in the movie, I think a lot of people who fell in love with Donkey Kong again, or got to know Donkey Kong for the first time if they were a kid, see this relationship between Donkey Kong and Mario in the movie, see his game Mario vs. Donkey Kong. I think definitely this is a very strategic move, and they are trying to build up the Donkey Kong brand here. Which kind of goes along with the theory, actually, that Nintendo's trying to build up the Donkey Kong brand here with the movie, with the park, and now this game that definitely fits quite well with what we saw in the movie. So while this is not a Donkey Kong game, it is a somewhat Donkey Kong related game, and I do think it's going to help to raise awareness of this character in a lead up to a big Donkey Kong game. Nintendo does do this. They do come out with things that help to build up certain IP. I think Pikmin is one of the best examples. We saw Pikmin in the Super Nintendo World Park all throughout. Literally throughout, you can find Pikmin hidden. They also released Pikmin 3 Deluxe. They also released the Pikmin mobile game. I think all of that was meant to be a lead up to Pikmin 4, which we have heard has sold really well. Never mind that they also released Pikmin 1 and 2 shortly before Pikmin 4. I think all of it was meant to really build up to Pikmin 4, which is a big deal game for this year, I would say. And once Nintendo does eventually showcase the next new Donkey Kong game, I think we'll be able to say the same about the park, the movie, and this Mario vs. Donkey Kong title. So I still think there's a plan for Donkey Kong, and with the expansion happening next year, I think there's a great chance we still hear about this new Donkey Kong game sometime next year. Maybe it doesn't release next year, but I at least think an announcement can happen. But perhaps the bigger question to ask is if the Donkey Kong game is coming out next year. Because if it doesn't, then I think we're looking at a situation where Donkey Kong is not coming out on Nintendo Switch, but rather Nintendo Switch 2 as an exclusive. I think that's what's really under debate now. I still think the Donkey Kong game is happening, but is it a Switch game, a Switch 2 game, or both? So let's play a little game. We got 12 squares here. Imagine that each of these squares represents a month in the year. And we're going to be talking about published Nintendo titles that will be coming out in 2024. We don't know for sure if there will be a game every single month, but typically Nintendo comes out with at least one published Nintendo title, usually one major Nintendo published title per month. Sometimes they may skip a month or two, sometimes they may have more than one published title in a month, but for the most part, they're close to averaging about one major title per month. So we already know about Another Code Recollection being published for January, Mario vs. Donkey Kong being published for February, and Princess Peach Showtime being published for March. These are the set release dates we already know about. We also know about Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. We don't know the exact time it's coming out, but it is slated for summer, so I'm slotting it in the June time slot. But we also know about Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, which just has a 2024 timing. I think that implies it's likely a second half of the year title. I don't think it's a holiday release, so I'm going to slot it here into August. But then we also know, or at least it's reported, that the Switch 2 is coming out next year. Sometime in the second half is what most sources are indicating. And I would say, based off the games lineup we already know about, that seems like a fairly safe bet. Of course, you never really know. Still, let's say it does happen, but not very late into the year. So let's say maybe September, so we got a 3D Mario. Metro Prime 4 is supposed to be coming out really soon too, so let's say that comes out October. And we always get a Pokemon game in November. So let's say a Legend style game or a Black White 3, whatever the rumors are suggesting, that comes out. These are likely releases for next year. I think it's a relatively safe bet. Maybe Prime 4 is pushed up, maybe 3D Mario is pushed up, but based off the reports, these seem really likely for next year even. And that leaves just 4 vacant months in the year. We actually have a decent idea of what's coming out next year, what Nintendo's lineup is. So with these assumptions in place, where would a brand new Donkey Kong game be fitted in? Obviously, only the first 3 games have set release timings. The rest, there's definitely some wiggle room for. But where would it go? I could see maybe summer, and I could see maybe sometime in the holiday. I doubt they would want to put Donkey Kong as a December title, but you know, maybe it's slotted into sometime around this window here of September, October, November. It could happen. And with the park supposed to be opening next year, I still think there's a chance. But what I really want to get at here is that we are running out of spaces. Nintendo does need to save things for beyond 2024. And with a new console coming out, it does make sense for them to save some big games for that new system. We are starting to see Nintendo mostly release remakes and remasters on the Switch, strongly suggesting that we are in this transitional phase. I still think, just like the Nintendo 3DS, they got mostly remakes and remasters for its last 3 years on the market, that the Switch will be supported with games. Mostly remakes and remasters, but still some new games as well. And this does leave the door open for Donkey Kong to come out on Nintendo Switch, not Switch 2. Of course, I also think Switch 2 will be backwards compatible, so it'll work both ways. The same way there's this Pokemon game, I think it's going to be a Switch game, but the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible most likely in my opinion, so it will still be available for that system. They could go in that direction. And if the next Donkey Kong game is a 2D Donkey Kong game, then I think it's very conceivable that it will still be a Switch game. But if it's something more ambitious, I don't think it'll be saved for Switch. I think it could very well be something pushed for Switch 2 if they're making it like this big, ambitious 3D Donkey Kong game, which I know some people dispute will be happening. But let's point out, several sources have corroborated the story that Vicarious Visions, which was a part of Activision, was working on an open-world Donkey Kong game back in 2016. This project was cancelled. This information has been supported by DK Vine, Nintendo Prime, Spawnwave. They've all heard that there was something like this in the works. Now, the idea behind the story isn't that that's what Nintendo's working on, simply that Nintendo greenlit that project with Activision at one point and was excited about it, but have moved on to something else. And what I'm suggesting here is that Nintendo may be open to other Donkey Kong ideas than just a 2D Donkey Kong game. Because if they wanted to make just another 2D Donkey Kong game, why didn't they get Retro Studios to do that? Because they made 2 amazing 2D Donkey Kong games with Donkey Kong Returns and Tropical Freeze. So all I'm saying is that this game may not just be another side-scroller that the Switch could easily pull off with its hardware. This may be something a bit more ambitious from a graphical scope perspective that they may want to showcase more on Switch 2. So to sum up my point here, I think there is a very good chance that it may be too late for Donkey Kong on Nintendo Switch. But very good chance isn't like a sure thing. There's still plenty of room for another exciting new title to come out for Nintendo Switch next year, not just another remake or a remaster. And with the Donkey Kong Park opening up next year, I do think it makes sense for a Donkey Kong game to come out next year. Nintendo could announce it early next year or in the summer. But if we get to the point where it's the summertime and they still haven't announced a new Donkey Kong game, at that point I'm thinking for sure this is very likely something that's going to be on Switch 2 or available for Switch 2. It may still come out for Switch as well, but the idea will be that it's going to be played on Switch 2 for years to come. So it's not too late, but I do think the clock is ticking a bit. And if you plan on getting the Switch 2, then you'll probably be able to play this Donkey Kong game regardless. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andre's Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.